Hey everyone, it's Boogeyman Ben. Hope everyone's doing well and everyone had a good day. This is going to be the first segment of the new thing I'm going to do each week, and that is Comic Book Wednesdays. I meant to start it last week, but I ended up not going to my local comic store, Flying Colors Comics, last week, and so I thought I'd just save it for this week. So I do go and collect comics still. I've been collecting comics since I was about, off and on since I was about 3 years old. And there's a story behind that, and I'll get to that eventually. But what I want these segments to be is not only showcasing the comic books that I buy on a weekly basis, but also talking about the history of some of the most important comic series from my childhood up and through my teens and 20s and 30s, since I've been collecting for so long. So this is going to be the first segment, and I hope everyone enjoys this, and stay tuned. Okay, here's my bag of new books that I got today. First one is the new Walking Dead, which is issue number 111. Now, the funny thing about the Walking Dead series is I've been collecting it now for a while. Probably I started really collecting it after the second season of the show started. But what I had to do was I had to go back and read all the trade paperbacks to get caught up, and I'm still missing a couple of the trade paperbacks. I'm actually I'm missing. I think I finished off at 12 and I need to read up until 15, and then I can pick up with the individual issues that have been coming out. So I haven't actually read any of the issues because I'm still waiting to get caught up on the trade paperbacks. But I keep buying the books every month, and then one day I'm just going to finally get the trade paperbacks and just go on a reading frenzy and read all of them. But yeah, this is the newest issue. Next issue we have is Green Arrow. With the exception of Batman and this one, and Morbius, those are the only really superhero kind of. I mean, Morbius is a vampire, but Green Arrow is a DC character that I really came to like back when Kevin Smith did the series Quiver back in the early 2000s, I'm going to say, and I really got into the character then. I've been collecting every series I could find since then. So yeah, I mean, I really like Green Arrow, and it's, like I said, one of the only superhero books that I collect alongside Batman from DC. They're the only two DC titles I collect. And then finally, which is I found the fourth issue of this series. Get out of the bag. On Free Comic Book Day, and it's called Haunted Horror, and what it does, it's archives of old horror comics, and I just love this. And these only come out every other month, I believe. Yeah, there's some just great old art in here. A lot of these books back in the day were banned. It's before they had the comic book code, so I love reading these old ghost stories. Like, I'm really into like the old EC comics, like Tales from the Crypt and The Haunt of Fear and things like that. But yeah, I just love this old artwork. So yeah, these are some of the pickups I got today. But yeah, just a couple of issues. Really love the haunted horror. So yeah, I was really happy to find this. So the next part of the segment is going to be a little bit of history. So, as kids that grew up in the 80s knew, Freddy Krueger was the shit, especially after 1988's film Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. So after that movie, which kind of it propelled Freddy Krueger and Robert Englund and the whole Nightmare on Elm Street series into just superstardom, and everything with Freddy came out. I mean, they had a Freddy's Greatest Hits CD. He was rapping alongside rap groups like the Fat Boys, and he was actually in a couple of, he had his own television series, Freddy's Nightmares, that started in 1988. I think it started in 88 or 89. I think it started in 88, actually. So, I mean, he was everywhere. What happened was Marvel Comics, which at the time was primarily known for, being a family-friendly comic book company, they put out a Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger's Nightmare on Elm Street. It was a magazine-style format. It was all black and white image, and this book was first released, I believe, in the summer of 1989. So I was really excited when this book came out. But as you can see, the art is, this is very old. I actually haven't taken it out of this sleeve in some time. You can see some of the art in here. Now this was pretty much a new story. It didn't include, with the exception of it being set in Springwood, and it including characters of Amanda Krueger and of course Freddy Krueger, none of the characters from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were in this. So when the series was released, it proved to be one of Marvel's top-selling black and white magazines. It even outsold the long-running Savage Sword of Conan magazine. But what happened was, I mean, despite the fact that distributors solicited the title through the 5th issue, Marvel quietly actually canceled the title after only 2 issues. So these are the only 2 issues they published. I always thought the cover for this one was cool. The art was really good. The rumors were that the Nightmare on Elm Street could have caused image problems for the publisher, like I said, because it was primarily known as a family-friendly company, even though it does say for mature readers. And what the rumor became was that there has been pressure from anti-violence advocate groups that were actively protesting violent media in the late 80s and early 90s. So it's unfortunate. I actually thought it was a really good series. And back then there was no internet, so I had no idea what happened when they just stopped carrying the magazines. But I remember them selling out very quickly. But yeah, it was a shame because I really did enjoy them. And I thought the artwork was great. But yeah, I was really disappointed because I wanted there to be, a lot of people that take for granted now that there's horror comics and toys and all this stuff. There wasn't a lot of this stuff when I was a kid, even though I grew up primarily in the 80s and early 90s when all of this horror stuff was, like Freddy Krueger and Jason and Michael Myers were all in movies in the movie theater. So, I wanted to see books and toys and all that stuff too. And so when they canceled this, I was pretty disappointed. But hope came in a couple of years, actually, when the Nightmare on Elm Street comics, there was a new Nightmare on Elm Street comic series that was put out by Innovation Comics. So in 1991, Innovation Publishing picked up the Nightmare on Elm Street license and published 3 series based on the franchise. This was all before the company filed for bankruptcy in 1992. The first series was the 6-issue Nightmare on Elm. It was a 6-issue Nightmare on Elm Street series. This was issue number 1, and it dealt with characters directly from the movies. So you had Nancy Thompson, Neil Gordon, Alice Johnson, and Jacob Johnson uniting to fight Freddy Krueger in his own nightmare world. This is issue number 1. I really like issue number 2. That's a great art right there. The first 2 issues of the series featured Nancy's return as a spirit in the beautiful dream, the place Kristen dreamed her into after she died, and revolved around Freddy killing Nancy's college roommates. And the events of the next 4 issues take place in the time period between A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, and Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Just show off some artwork. The Dream Warriors there. I thought they did a really good job in this book. So yeah, I mean it was a good series. Okay, the second series from Innovation was based on the movie Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. So yeah, this was coming out right when the series came out. so it was be in late summer, early fall of 1991. And they even put out a 3D version of the final issue. So here's issue number 2. Poor Carlos and the hearing aid. They did some great artwork. And here's the 3D one. So this was the same as this issue. Just different. This was all in 3D, so I thought that was neat. And just to show you off some of the artwork. Classic scenes like every town has an Elm Street. I mean, Freddy's Dead's not my favorite movie, but still need to have a comic book from one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. The Dream Demons. So they fight him at the end. Blows up at the end. So yeah, it was a good series. I really like this one too. Now, the last one they published was Nightmare on Elm Street, The Beginning, and this follows the characters from Freddy's Dead Final Nightmare. So you had his daughter Baggy continues to have nightmares about her dad and everything. But what happened was they only published, there was supposed to be 3 issues and they published only 2 because what happened was the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Yeah, they never published the 3rd issue. And I was doing a little research on this for this video segment and found out that the 3rd issue, even though it was unpublished, the guy that wrote it, his name was Andy Mangels. And you can actually... the original script for issue number 3 is available on his website now. Then next, now there was a couple of other Nightmare on Elm Street comics, but that went to like Wildstorm Productions did one. The only other one I got, and Trident Comics was another one, but the only other one I have is from Avatar, and this is the first issue. It was called Paranoid, and it was a 3-issue limited series. So this was released in May of 2005, and it was going to be like a 3-issue limited series, but I guess they had a really erratic publishing schedule, and the 2nd and 3rd issues of the series were not released until the summer of 2006. So that's what happened. I never got the other 2 issues because at the time I was working in San Francisco, and the comic book store I found there didn't carry the rest of the issues, that they were sold out. So I never got the other 2 issues. But eventually the miniseries was followed by a standalone issue titled Fear Book before Avatar lost the New Line House of Horror license. So this is the only other Freddy Krueger comic I have, and I've never read this one because I didn't get the other 2 issues. But eventually I'll find them. I'd like to have all of them. But yeah, I just thought this would be a fun little segment to do for Comic Book Wednesdays. So each week I'm going to do another segment on a series of comics or a comic book series that is really one that I either grew up liking and or like this one where it jumped publishers, and there was a bunch of different publishers that released books and stories based on an iconic character like Freddy Krueger. So I thank everybody for watching, and I hope everyone has a good evening, and leave me your feedback on what you thought about Comic Book Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening.